In Asia, it's hot and it's humid a good part of the year, and it's not uncommon to see kitchens outside the home in a little lean-to. And in those kitchens, typically you'll find a wok burner and a wok and a grill of some kind. Now, the food is delicate and oftentimes it's cut smaller, and so those grills are configured slightly differently. For instance, in Thailand and Vietnam, you might see a satay grill, which is only 8 inches deep, but about 3 feet long, just long enough to hold a piece of skewered meat like this. So in that vein, I'm going to be cooking today over a little hibachi. And in that hibachi, it's very hot right now, I have a very special charcoal called binchotan. Now, binchotan is a charcoal that's natural, which is to say no additives, no binders added to it. It also burns very, very clean and very, very hot. It makes almost no smoke, as you can see. And more than that, once it's lit, it stays lit from 3 to 5 hours, so you get a long burn. This is the sort of thing that you might see small skewered foods served off of. One of the challenges with binchotan, and there's a couple. The first is it's expensive. For the best quality binchotan, you can expect to pay $8 or $10 a pound, and even for a lesser quality, expect $3 a pound. That's one of the challenges. If you can see your way clear to buying it, it takes a long time to light. As an example, I took a stick like this and put it over an open flame on the stovetop for a full 30 minutes before it finally caught. So give yourself plenty of time. Because the fire is so hot and we're skewering food, I have some skewers that I've soaked in water to keep them from bursting into flames. All right, with that little preamble, let's get started. Maybe in a Thai restaurant you have had satays with a peanut sauce. That's what we're going to make first. And I want to create a little marinade or rub for this meat. What I have here is curry powder. I have turmeric right next door. I've got cumin and coriander. And then finally garlic. And an ingredient we'll talk more about later, fish sauce and sugar. Okay? So all of those ingredients are going to be gathered together in this bowl. And we'll just stir them together with a little bit of oil. Now that's all there is to that. The fish sauce has plenty of salt in there, so I think we'll probably be good in terms of salt. Maybe just some pepper and we'll call it a day. All right. Now, I have one piece of meat here that I have not skewered. This is fairly tender beef. It comes from the New York strip. And I've taken it and pounded it a little bit, and I've actually scored it and roughed it up with a knife just so that it has more surface area. It absorbs marinade more readily, and it crisps up more readily. And I'm just going to put this on here, thread it on here very, very easily. And use the meat to actually protect the skewer. All right, so why don't we cook 3 or 4 of these? I'm going to set the rest down below. And just turn them in the marinade. If a brush helps, you can use a brush. And this meat could sit very happily in the marinade for 4, 5, 6 hours overnight. There's nothing in there that will degrade the meat. There's no acid that will start to cook it. That's all there is to that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put this on the grill. And you can see how very hot this grill is. Keep the edge of the stick off of the heat, away from the heat, so that the stick doesn't catch fire and burn. All right, while that is happening, while that is cooking, I have a sauce here. The first time I tasted this sauce in a Thai restaurant, I thought, peanut sauce made from peanut butter, how difficult could that be? And I went home and I immediately tried to make it, and I had some small amount of success, but not much. What I discovered over the years is that there's a couple of other ingredients that are pretty important. Coconut milk makes its way in here. Likewise, fish sauce, one of the staple ingredients in Southeast Asia. And last but not least, they use a curry paste. Now, Thailand sits next to India. India is famous for its curries, and when the idea of curry made its way to Thailand, they took some of those ingredients, but fresh, not dried, and they turned them into a moist paste, and that became curry paste. And you can find it in red, made red from red chilies, yellow, made yellow from yellow chilies, and green, made green from green chilies. They're very, very spicy and complex. All of those have made their way in here, and then it's been seasoned. So peanut butter, coconut milk, curry paste, and seasoned with fish sauce. Let's see how this meat is doing. It's browning beautifully. I better get moving. I want to make a little cucumber salad, and this is pretty typical to serve with satés. What I'm going to put on here is some rice wine vinegar right on top of sliced cucumbers. I'm going to add some sugar. And adding sugar to savory food is something that really distinguishes Southeast Asian food. We relegate sweetness to the end of the meal where dessert happens, but in cultures that don't drink wine with their food, sweetness makes its way into the rest of the meal. Wine and sugar don't like one another. Okay, I'm going to quick turn these over. They're browning beautifully. The meat is cut so thin that I better hurry up. So in here goes Thai bird chilies sliced very, very thin. These are so hot you don't want to get a big piece. Cilantro and mint make their way right into this. The rest of the sugar, and I'm going to add some red onion because I love the way it looks against the green of the cucumbers. And we'll stir this salad together. This can be done ahead as well. It keeps very well. The nice thing about holding on to this salad for a little while is that when the acid hits those red onions, they turn sort of an electric pink color. Red pigments in vegetables absolutely adore acidity. Little salt. And I'm happy with that. The peanut sauce I'm going to put over the heat. Let's put this first satay on the plate. We're going to start with some of this beautiful cucumber salad. Sometimes people like to squeeze a little bit more lemon on, so I'm happy to accommodate. And then I'm going to take this meat and I'm going to stack it right onto this plate, just like that. So there is our beef satay with the peanut sauce. I'm going to garnish it with two very special garnitures that you will see in Southeast Asia a lot. One of them, just chopped peanuts, and this sort of tells a flavor story about the sauce below. And the other is fried shallots that are sliced very, very thin and fried slowly so that they can first dry out, the bubbling will stop, and then they can begin to brown, and I know that they'll be crispy. And there they are. So there we've got the beef satay, and if you have a little bit of the sauce left over, I would make sure to put it on the side because people are going to love to add it to your dish. So this little hibachi was actually made for the next dish that we are going to prepare. This is yakitori, all kinds of food that is skewered and grilled over live fire and served up just as it comes from the grill. What I have here is chicken thigh meat that has been skewered on the dampened skewers. Some of these are skewered with onions and peppers, others with just green onions. What I want to do is drizzle on a little bit of oil, just to keep these from sticking, and the oil also conducts heat beautifully. And just a tiny bit of salt, and that's all we need to do. Now, just so that the oil is on here evenly, I'm going to blot it, and this is going to go right on the grill. Again, make sure that you don't allow the sticks to burn. So leave the sticks off the edge of the grill. These will probably take no more than 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes to cook. There is a little sauce here that they have when they're making yakitori. It's a combination of sweet soy, and sweet soy has a dark sugar, a caramelized sugar added to it. And you can tell it, you can see how beautifully it coats the back of this spoon. Sweet soy coats like that. Regular soy sauce does not. Anyhow, this is mirin, sweetened rice wine, sake, sweet soy, and sugar. And what you're looking for is just a delicious mix of savory, sweet, and salt flavors. And it's there. Now, there is something else that I have floating in here, and I'll just share it with you. These are the chicken bones that I grilled after I took this meat from the bone, and I put them in there to lend their flavor to the sauce as it was simmering. What we're going to do is, as this meat grills, we're going to turn it when it needs to be turned, and then just before it's ready to come off, we'll take this meat and dip it into that sauce and put it back on the grill. That will season it and glaze it in the most beautiful way because of the sugar. But because there's sugar in there, be careful that you don't let it burn. Let's see how we're doing here. Things are browning nicely. So this has been grilling now for about 2.5 minutes. It's just about ready. And what I want to do is take this off and dip it into this sauce. Let it drip dry and then put it back on the grill to glaze. I'm going to do the same with each of them. Now, you can probably recognize a challenge. In a restaurant setting, they would keep this warm so that it would stay sterile. If you do this at home and you dip chicken in there, you want to make sure that you boil it before you put it away to be used again later on. If you don't like that idea, you can take a small amount and just brush it onto the meat as it grills. Now that you've introduced that sweetness, be a little bit careful that you watch it very carefully, because you can see it loves to brown. Sugar likes to caramelize. And you can see it happen right before your eyes. There it is again. That caramelization translates into delicious, deep flavors, but too much of a good thing, and it just tastes burnt. So we'll watch this carefully. We're going to garnish this with something called togarashi. And togarashi translates as 7 spice. Togarashi has chilies, black and white sesame, little bits of seaweed, orange zest. It's a wonderful, savory condiment. Sometimes these are even sprinkled with something called sancho pepper. You may know it as Szechuan peppercorns, which has sort of a numbing effect. It makes the food seem exciting and almost a little bit electric. Okay, so I think these look great. We're going to take them off and put them onto the plate. Don't overcook them, because if you do, the meat will just dry out. But I can guarantee you this is going to taste so wonderful and savory. because of that dip that was mostly soy sauce and caramelized sugar. Now, let me show you what we're going to do. I'm going to sprinkle on a little bit of this togarashi. It has a little bit of pepperiness to it, so if you don't like your food spicy, then by all means hold back. And there is our second skewered food, yakitori. This is chicken yakitori. So one last grilled satay. This is going to be lemongrass pork, and I need to put together a quick little marinade for the meat. It starts with fish sauce, and anytime you see fish sauce, typically you will see sugar as well, and that cuts through and balances some of the saltiness of the fish sauce. Now, lemongrass pork, so in goes lemongrass. That needs to be cut up very fine because it's really, really fibrous. Shallots, and some garlic, and finally a little bit of soy sauce. So we'll stir this together. Fish sauce, soy sauce, lemongrass, which has a wonderful citrusy quality, but herbaceous and citrusy. Now, one last thing that I'm going to put in here, and you can find this at markets, Asian markets, that is caramel sauce. You can see it's nice and thick. It has a delicious caramely sweetness to it. It's not absolutely essential. Any sugar is going to caramelize on the grill top. If you can't find caramel sauce, I would put a little bit of brown sugar, a couple of tablespoons of brown sugar in there. And then finally some pepper, and this marinade is ready to go. Let me set this to the back. So I've got a tender piece of pork here. It's going to cook very, very quickly. This is pork tenderloin, and what we're going to do is spoon this marinade over the meat. The skewers again have been soaked. The meat has been pounded slightly so it's tender, and I usually rough up the outside just by passing my knife over it to make sure that it takes the marinade well. This could sit very happily in the marinade for an hour or two while your fire gets nice and hot. There's no reason that it couldn't. Once it's ready to go, we're going to put it on the grill, but a word of caution, a lot of sweetness in here, sugar and caramel sauce. So keep your eye on it because it will cook very, very quickly. It will brown very, very quickly. Now, there's something that's a little counterintuitive, and I'll tell you what it is. If you find something browning because there's too much sugar on it, you might say, "Oh God, I gotta take it off. I can't cook it anymore." But the reality is, if I take a little bit more of this marinade and put it on, that moisture brings the surface temperature down, and it buys me a little bit more time on the grill. So, with this marinade here, I can just brush a little bit extra on if it's browning too quickly, and that will slow it down. Now, if you take a peek, already we're seeing some browning of the sugars. So don't let this take you by surprise. I warned you. Now the way you earn your money is just to keep up with this. As you watch, if you see a lot of gray smoke, that may be sugar first browning and then burning. What you want is that beautiful lacquered glaze. And it's starting to show up there. Don't burn the sticks. It's starting to show up there. And I'll moisten it one more time. We'll turn all of these guys. This is actually pretty fun because I don't need tongs to turn these. Just make sure that the sticks extend out over the edge. Okay, these are beautifully cooked. They're lacquered and lovely looking. The one admonition I want to throw your way, don't put any of the raw marinade on in the last minute of cooking. You want to give it a chance to cook and be safe to eat. So the marinade had raw pork in it, but by keeping it off of the pork in that last minute, we should be fine. Here is one, and you can see the stick burnt. Just keep the stick to the edge of the grill so that it doesn't burn. Oh, there's another. I'm talking too much. The rest of these should be fine. All right, there it is, lemongrass pork, that's from Vietnam. Here, Thai beef satay with peanut sauce from Thailand, and then finally, chicken yakitori from Japan. So one last comment before we leave the hibachi behind. I told you how hot it is, and it's sitting right on top of a wooden table. This is specifically designed to keep the heat in. The sides are thick ceramic, and I can touch the sides, and while they're warm, they're not hot. Underneath, there's big rubber feet that hold it up above the tabletop. So I can put my hand underneath it, and it's not even hot at all. So you can use this on a tabletop, but don't use it on a tabletop inside. You should always burn charcoal out of doors. There's a problem with carbon monoxide that you can't taste or smell, and it is poisonous. So always outside. And if you follow those few simple rules, happy hibachi cooking is for you. So we're going to shift gears and head over to Korea. They've got a great dish there, short ribs that are actually grilled. Now, you've probably had short ribs where they're braised, cooked long and slow in a moist environment. That's because they can be a little bit tough, but what they do in Korea that's brilliant is they take the fibers that can be so tough and they cut them very, very thin, and suddenly it eats more tender. You can see the beautiful marbling in this meat that just makes it taste delicious. Now you can see I've got gloves on. When you're working at the grill and you don't have ready access to a sink, it might be a good idea to have some gloves that you can just put on when you want to do some work, and then instead of running inside to wash your hands, you can just peel your gloves off and put on another pair if and when you need it. You can find short ribs sliced like this, Korean style, in Korean markets, but if you can't find it, all you can find is this short rib. Then I'm going to show you what you can do. You can take this and slice on top of the bone, almost all the way through, and then open it up and continue to slice about 1/4 inch thick and continue to open it up until you get a piece of meat that is just as thin as this. So if you can't find these, this will work as well. All right, next thing we're going to do is make a marinade. And like a lot of marinades, it's going to start with vinegar. That's rice wine vinegar and some oil. And then we're going to put in some ginger, some sugar, a little bit of scallion that is chopped up, and some sesame. Now, the really special ingredient here that I want to share with you is Korean chili paste. Everybody has their own special favorite chili. This is one of mine. While it's spicy hot, there's a little bit of sweetness to it, and it's not so overwhelmingly spicy that it hurts. And so we're going to take some of that and add it to our marinade, and then we'll stir this all together. And really the reason that I wanted to have these gloves on is not because I was handling meat, but because I want to rub this marinade into the meat. So here we go. We're going to lay the meat in, whether it is the Korean cut or the ones that we finessed here. We'll open them both up. I'm going to take the bone off. Oftentimes you will see the bone left on because The little bit of meat that hangs on the bone tastes great once it's been grilled. And we'll rub this marinade right into the meat. Marinades can do a lot of different things. They can tenderize, they can preserve. In this case, it acts as a preservative and it will keep for a long time. Sometimes if a marinade has acid in it, as this one does, grilled food can become safer. There are some compounds that come from grilling that aren't particularly good for you, and if you have an acidic marinade, those compounds disappear almost, about 90%. All right, so now that I've got this all marinated, I'm going to take these gloves off, and we can come over to the grill. I brushed it down clean. I want to get an oiled towel just to wipe anything that doesn't belong on the grill off. This is as much about cleaning the grill as it is oiling the grill. And then we'll take these pieces of meat and on they go. They are not very thick, so they should cook over a relatively hot fire. Now, sometimes meat like this is served in a more formal way where they put it over a bowl of rice and they have a little pickled cabbage, kimchi on the side. But what we're going to do is make it a little simpler than that. We're going to take the meat and we're going to slice it and put it into a lettuce cup with just a simple little scallion salad and eat it out of hand. Now, when you're trying to decide when this meat should be turned, if it's starting to brown too aggressively, even though it's not all the way cooked, if it's browning too aggressively, you have the luxury of deciding to turn it over. Once you've turned it, the part that was browning has the opportunity to cool a little bit, and it stops browning so quickly. So, if you need to, you have the option of turning it multiple times to control how quickly the meat is browning. When I turn it back over, I might turn it 90 degrees to establish some cross-hatch marks on there and to make it brown a little bit more effectively. So, as an example, we'll turn it like this now. Now, one of the things that you can't smell is the smell of sesame beginning to toast on the grill. Whenever you're grilling something that's got chilies in it, sometimes as those chilies cook, it can catch in your throat. So being outdoors is the perfect place to cook this. Ideal, I would say, is to cook this medium well. We don't want to cook it rare. Really what we want is a lot of caramelization of that marinade. Just a quick word about flare-ups. I can see a little flame here. Maybe you can see it just licking up through the grates. It's not particularly healthy for you if fat burns and then deposits chemicals onto the meat. Beyond it not being healthy, it also doesn't taste very good. So some people have a little spray bottle of water, but my preferred method is to simply take the meat and move it to a different part of the grill. Stay calm, move it, and then carry on. The fire will burn itself out, and when it does, everything's right with the world. Okay, I'm going to take this meat from the grill. And we'll bring it over here. I've got a nice sharp knife. And I want to cut this into bite-sized pieces. You have the luxury, if it's not quite done, of just bringing it back over to the the grill for a second, I think what you'll discover is that these thin ones, the Korean style, I can cut from the bone and those will be done. So this can continue to cook on the grill. And we're going to deposit this meat right into the lettuce cups. Now, if I weren't on camera right here, right now, I would take and gnaw at these bones. Maybe I'll save them over there for a little bit later. And I think at this point, this meat has cooked the rest of the way. And at the end of the day, what you want to do is grab one of these little cups of deliciousness, garnish it with a little scallion salad. This is scallions and sesame oil, sesame seeds, and chilies. And then gather it all up. And you'll have to excuse me while I enjoy myself. This is really a treat that you have to make and experience for yourself to really understand how much fun I'm having right now. So there you have Korean grilled short ribs served in lettuce cups with a really simple scallion salad.